She remained seated at the edge of the family gathering, holding herself with a calm that felt almost unnatural. Conversations drifted around her like distant echoes, never truly including her, never truly acknowledging her presence. Then her sister spoke, releasing a single calculated sentence into the room, a sentence designed to wound her without raising its volume. Every person present heard it. Every person absorbed it. Yet not one individual stepped forward to correct it, to soften it, or to shield her from the quiet cruelty that had just been delivered. The words settled into the air like frost, and the room allowed them to remain there. She did not react. She did not move. Her expression remained perfectly composed, controlled to the point of discomfort. She allowed the moment to live without offering any hint of pain or resistance, because none of them possessed even the slightest understanding of what she actually owned, and none of them possessed the imagination to predict what was quietly approaching. Throughout her childhood, a particular pattern formed around her without any formal announcement, yet it shaped everything. Her sister moved through the household like a favored star, receiving attention with ease, admiration without effort, and affection as naturally as breathing. Every achievement her sister displayed became a celebrated event, while every achievement she presented was handled like a minor detail, acknowledged only briefly before fading into the background. She learned early that her presence did not generate excitement, and her accomplishments did not spark pride. The family dynamic had a fixed structure, and her position within it remained consistently low. Her sister absorbed praise, opportunities, and validation without interruption, while she absorbed silence, avoidance, and comparison. She became familiar with existing as the person who was considered lesser, not because she lacked ability, but because she lacked favoritism. Emotional neglect does not announce itself loudly. Instead, it settles into a person like a slow, quiet frost. Over the years, she felt the small, accumulating dismissals from every direction. A celebration that was never planned for her. A harsh remark that was brushed aside. A moment of effort that received no acknowledgement. These experiences layered themselves upon her until she learned to stop expecting warmth from any direction. Yet within that silence, something else began to form. While the rest of her family remained focused on the bright, polished version of her sister, she started to build an inner structure that nobody ever noticed. She observed details others overlooked. She learned persistence in a way that favoritism never teaches. She studied quietly, worked quietly, planned quietly, and strengthened herself without applause. She began to understand that attention is fleeting, but discipline endures. That admiration can be given, but resilience must be earned. Her silence slowly became her foundation, her shield, and her sharpest tool. Every year that she remained underestimated, she cultivated a level of emotional control that her sister had never been forced to develop. Her family believed she remained small because they never witnessed her growth. What they failed to see was that she had been constructing a life far beyond their imagination, piece by careful piece, hidden in the very shadows they had pushed her into. She did not rise loudly. She rose intentionally, and nobody saw it happening. The first true fracture did not arrive with a major event. It arrived quietly, almost politely, disguised as an insignificant moment, the way genuine betrayals often do. During a community gathering, where laughter floated through the room and everyone attempted to appear kinder than they truly were, her sister created an opportunity for performance. With a carefully timed gesture and an expression that appeared soft to the untrained eye, her sister presented a comment that was designed to appear harmless, yet it carried the unmistakable edge of something sharpened in private. The remark traveled across the room quickly, landing upon her with the familiar weight of humiliation. It drew a few uncomfortable glances, followed by the practiced silence that always protected her sister. The room pretended the comment carried no cruelty, the way rooms often enable those who enjoy unchallenged dominance. She felt the familiar ache rise within her, the one she had carried since childhood, an ache shaped from years of subtle dismissal and constant comparison. However, something different rose beside that ache. It was colder, steadier, and entirely new. She felt no desire to defend herself. Instead, she observed. She watched her sister's expression, the slight upward twitch of satisfaction, the unmistakable pleasure that came from undermining her in front of others. It was then that she finally saw what had always been present but never spoken aloud. Her sister did not simply desire attention. Her sister desired superiority, specifically superiority over her. From that moment, patterns began to reveal themselves. She noticed how her sister hovered around her social presence, monitoring her posts, her achievements, her connections. Every success brought her sister an uneasy tension that became visible in tightened shoulders and forced smiles. Her sister had begun to feel threatened, although the threat existed only in her mind. The realization settled deeply. Her sister's confidence depended entirely upon her perceived inferiority. The recognition did not bring anger. It brought clarity. Instead of responding, she allowed the moment to pass untouched. She maintained her silence, not because she felt defeated, but because she had finally understood that silence could be a strategic space. While her sister continued speaking, unknowingly revealing motive after motive, she began to take mental notes. Every insult disguised as humor, every calculated comparison, every public performance of subtle cruelty. She gave nothing in return. She simply documented. Later that evening, while the gathering continued around her, she stepped away into a quieter part of the house. She opened a small notebook that she rarely used and wrote down the date, the event, the specific remark, and the emotional temperature of the room. She wrote it all plainly, without sentiment and without embellishment. It became the first entry of what would evolve into a record, a timeline, a quiet archive of every hidden strike. In that moment, she understood that the seed had already been planted. The seed did not resemble rage. It resembled strategy. It resembled patience. It resembled an awakening that had been waiting for years. Her sister believed she had won that evening. Her sister had absolutely no idea what she had actually begun. There existed a portion of her life that no one within her family had ever been permitted to witness. It had not begun with secrecy. It had begun with survival. Over the years, she had learned that visibility often invited sabotage, especially when surrounded by individuals who measured their own worth by the limitations they could place upon others. Quietly, steadily, and without any outward display, she built a life that existed beneath the surface of the one her family believed they understood. The foundation of this hidden life started with the property. Years ago, during a moment of clarity that followed a series of exhausting familial disappointments, she purchased a small but valuable piece of land on the edge of the city. The decision had not been driven by ambition. It had been driven by the desire to possess something that belonged to her alone, something untouched by the expectations, judgments, and invasive curiosity that had shaped her childhood. She held the deed with unwavering care, ensuring that no relative ever learned of its existence. The property became her quiet anchor, a reminder that she could build stability without anyone's permission. Alongside the property came a business stake. It had begun as an investment, modest and almost forgettable, yet the company expanded, and her involvement grew in parallel. She never revealed it. She never celebrated it. She simply allowed it to flourish under the shelter of her silence. The dividends accumulated over time, providing her with a form of financial independence that no one in her family would have believed she possessed. This secrecy formed a protective wall around her, a wall she strengthened deliberately year after year. The hidden apartment was assembled later, during a period when the emotional climate within her family had reached a level of suffocating hostility. The apartment served as her sanctuary. It was located in a quiet building with walls thick enough to keep the world outside, and windows large enough to allow the city lights to soften the edges of her solitude. She furnished it with intention. Every object had meaning. Every corner offered calm. It became the one environment where her thoughts could unfold without interruption. No one knew she slept there on nights when the weight of family expectations became unbearable. No one knew she sometimes spent entire weekends inside that space, rebuilding herself quietly. Her financial assets formed the final layer of this concealed world. Each account, each investment, each reserve existed with precise structure, designed to protect her from the unpredictable storms created by the people who claimed to care for her. She ensured that nothing could be traced back easily. She ensured that her security could not be dismantled by any emotional manipulation, any entitled demand, or any sudden crisis manufactured by the same individuals who consistently underestimated her. Every decision had been deliberate. Every detail had been preserved with discipline. She did not hide these things out of fear. She hid them out of necessity. Transparency had never served her. Privacy had always saved her. The silence around her assets allowed her to move freely, think clearly, and remain untouched by the chaos that often erupted around her sister. Emotional independence had become her quiet rebellion, a rebellion executed without raised voices or theatrical confrontations. It was the slow, patient reclamation of a life that had once belonged more to others than to herself. As the layers of her hidden life grew stronger, a subtle shift occurred within her. She no longer moved with uncertainty. She moved with intention. She no longer braced herself for her sister's judgments. She observed them with detached clarity. Beneath her calm exterior, an unspoken truth settled deeply. Her strength existed far beyond the versions of her that her family believed they could control. The audience of her life, both silent and unknowing, would never have imagined the extent of what she carried. They would never have imagined the quiet power she had built. And soon, they would discover that she had never been the fragile one in the room. She converted observation into architecture. Where others might have called it resentment, she called it intelligence. She studied her sister with the same methodical attention she had once given to mission planning and logistical coordination. Habits revealed themselves like worn paths through a field. The times of day her sister lingered online, the account she favored, the particular cadence of her replies, the exact phrase she used when attempting to undermine a person from a distance. All of these small behaviors became data points. She cataloged them, indexed them, and allowed patterns to emerge with frightening clarity. She created lists that read like reconnaissance files. A nightly ritual of reflection produced precise notes. Hours when the sister scrolled aimlessly, friends who amplified her voice, public spaces where the sister sought validation, the small rituals of attention that fed her hunger for superiority. Each entry was dated and time-stamped. Each observation contained context and likely motive. She drew timelines across paper and screen, connecting incidents that had once appeared random into a coherent web of expectation. Where her sister believed she was invisible, she had in fact become both observer and cartographer. From that intelligence, she fashioned psychological traps. The traps were not loud. They were not dramatic. They were subtly placed pieces that appeared ordinary to anyone not looking for their deliberate arrangement. A photograph without identifying landmarks became a hint worth following. A mention of a name in an otherwise innocuous comment became a breadcrumb leading toward curiosity. She curated posts with care, selecting images that suggested luxury without revealing addresses, posting at times she had determined were most likely to catch her sister in an idle scroll. Each public revelation was a controlled fragment, chosen to inflame intrigue without exposing the whole truth. She practiced patience as if it were a tangible instrument. She allowed the sister to find selected pieces slowly, the pace calibrated to breed obsession rather than understanding. Her sister, unable to resist the lure of confirmation, began to monitor with increasing intensity. She reread old entries, traced connections, and followed the crumbs with a fervor that betrayed more than curiosity. With every small discovery, the sister constructed a private narrative of entitlement and superiority that carried no understanding of strategy. She kept her own hands clean of obvious action. She did not call attention to the trail. She did not confront. She placed information deliberately where the sister could not help but stumble upon it. A printed receipt left in a public recycling bin, a tag on an overlooked photograph, a message sent to an acquaintance that she knew the sister would overhear. Each act was an arranged coincidence. In private files she maintained records of those placements, noting the time, the intended observer, and the expected reaction. She treated each reaction as feedback, refining her approach with the precision of an engineer calibrating an instrument. Her nights became laboratories of timing. She drafted late-night checklists that governed the release of each suggestion. She mapped probable pathways of discovery like lines on a military map. She rehearsed, mentally, the angles of attention, the windows in which the sister would act, the moments when curiosity would override caution. Emotional detachment was not absence of feeling. It was strategy applied to temperament. She did not allow triumph to warm her. She did not allow anger to cloud her judgment. She remained a clarifying force, channeling emotion into design. She documented everything. Screenshots were archived. Dates were recorded. Witness accounts were noted in neutral language. This archive would not only serve as proof if the need arose, but it also served as a mirror that reflected back the inevitability of the path she had constructed. Every trap set contained redundancy, an insurance of sorts that the sister could not undo what she had not yet fully seen. In public, she presented as she always had. Composed, restrained, unreadable. Behind the composed exterior, an entire campaign unfolded with slow, deliberate cunning. The sister fed herself information, lured by the very curiosity she had always weaponized. The traps did not seek to entrap for cruelty. They sought to reveal pattern and to enable consequence. The sister began to move with a nervous energy that had not existed before, driven by the compulsion to prove, to correct, and to claim. Each of those moves was anticipated, recorded, and turned into the next step of the plan. She was not interested in spectacle. She was interested in outcome. The architecture of quiet revenge depended upon patience, foresight, and the conversion of small humiliations into a comprehensive demonstration of truth. In the careful unfolding of discovery, the sister's own instability would be exposed to everyone she wished to impress. In that exposure, strategy would replace rumor. In that exposure, inevitability would replace arrogance. She had always known that her sister possessed a restless curiosity, an instinctive urge to uncover anything that might give her an upper hand. That same curiosity had now pulled her into a place she had never been meant to enter. It happened quietly, without warning, and without the awareness of the consequences that waited beneath the surface. A single misplaced folder, a single document not fully concealed, became the beginning of the unraveling. The sister found the apartment deed first. It lay among unrelated papers, disguised by mundane receipts and maintenance notices. There was nothing dramatic about the discovery. It was almost accidental, almost careless. Yet the sister froze as soon as she understood what she was holding. A deed to a location she had never heard mentioned. A signature she recognized without effort. A legal confirmation that the quiet sibling she had dismissed for years owned an entire residence she had never been told about. She stared at the document for a long moment, unable to reconcile the revelation with the narrative she had always believed. Then she found the business paperwork. It was a thin file, but the contents held weight that settled heavily upon her chest. Percentages, shares, quarterly divisions, projected earnings, and ownership rights formed a structured reality that contradicted every assumption she had used to maintain her sense of superiority. She read every line with widening disbelief. She reread them as if repetition might soften the truth. The detailed records confirmed influence, stability, and quiet authority. Nothing about it matched the image she had created in her mind of a weaker sibling who required validation. Shock settled first. It was a silent shock, the kind that pushed the breath out of her body without creating sound. She felt her pulse shift in rhythm, felt the edges of her certainty break apart, felt her long-held assumptions lose their structure. She had believed herself untouchable within the hierarchy she had created. She had believed that her sister existed beneath her, a shadow living in the background. This discovery dismantled that belief entirely. Jealousy followed. It arrived like a cold, invasive current that seeped into her thoughts and steadily poisoned them. She compared the paper she held to the life she had constructed for herself, a life built on attention, pretense, and carefully curated illusions. She could not tolerate the possibility that her sister had achieved more by remaining silent than she had achieved through constant performance. The knowledge cut deeply because it revealed not only imbalance, but also incompetence. She had spent her life seeking validation, while the person she belittled had acquired independence without public applause. Then came panic. It was immediate, consuming, and unregulated. Her mind raced through possibilities. She wondered how much more she had not seen. She wondered how long this hidden world had existed. She wondered who else knew. She wondered how she would maintain the illusion she had built for her social circle when the truth stood in stark contrast to her claims. The more she wondered, the more unstable her breathing became. In that moment she understood something she had never permitted herself to consider. Her sister had never been lesser. She had never been weaker. She had been silent, disciplined, and deliberate. The silence had not been a sign of inadequacy. It had been a sign of power. A sign that true stability required no performance. The sister stood in the room holding the documents, trembling beneath the weight of her own realization. Everything she believed about the family hierarchy, about superiority, about worth, fractured with a quiet and devastating finality. Her narrative had collapsed, and she had no foundation left to stand upon. She understood then that she had never been the dominant one. She had only been loud. The sister's panic did not fade. It tightened around her mind, creating a desperate urgency that pushed her toward a single reckless decision. She needed to reclaim control. She needed to re-establish the hierarchy she had always depended upon. Her method was predictable, impulsive, and deeply rooted in fear. She carried the documents to a gathering, clutching them as if they were proof of a crime instead of proof of her own blindness. She presented the papers in front of everyone with trembling hands, attempting to expose what she believed would make her sister appear deceitful. She expected outrage. She expected shock directed toward the quiet sibling. She expected validation, comfort, and alignment. Instead, her voice and her gestures carried an unmistakable tone of entitlement and desperation. Her attempt to maintain dominance revealed something she never intended to reveal. It exposed her insecurity. The crowd watched her movements with confused expressions. They noticed the frantic energy. They noticed the trembling breath. They noticed the way her eyes darted, searching for agreement that did not appear. The scene unfolded slowly, each second peeling away the authority she thought she possessed. The documents she waved lacked incriminating force. They displayed ownership, stability, and quiet success. Her attempt at exposure became a reflection of her own unraveling. Meanwhile, the main character remained composed. There was no rush to defend anything. There was no need to refute claims or explain intentions. She stood with an expression that held neither fear nor triumph. She embodied a calm so unsettling that it created a silent shift in the room. Her stillness communicated more control than any words ever could. Her quiet presence contrasted sharply with her sister's chaotic gestures, making the difference between them unmistakable. The truth began to reveal itself without force. It emerged in small, cold, controlled pieces, each one delivered through action, not speech. A subtle nod toward the business documents confirmed legitimacy. A steady gaze at the apartment deed confirmed ownership. A slight acknowledgement of financial records confirmed depth far beyond what anyone assumed. The simplicity of her responses rendered every accusation weightless. The sister's manipulation became visible with painful clarity. For years she had positioned herself as superior through volume and performance, but the present moment dismantled that illusion. Her attempt to humiliate someone who had remained silent became evidence of her jealousy. Her frantic behavior became evidence of her insecurity. Her emotional instability became evidence of her long-hidden weakness. Observers began to distance themselves from her, physically and emotionally. They recognized the pattern they had previously ignored. They recognized that her superiority had been constructed from fragile ego and loudness. They recognized that her sister had never resisted, not because she lacked strength, but because she possessed discipline. Their shifted expressions formed a quiet judgment heavier than any verbal criticism. The sister felt it immediately. She felt the loss of support. She felt eyes analyzing her actions. She felt the silent accusations forming in the minds of people she had relied on for validation. Her breath shortened. Her posture weakened. Her confidence broke apart in slow fragments. Panic returned with sharp edges. Then came the final blow, delivered not through confrontation, but through calm clarity. The main character revealed the one truth that stripped the last layer of the sister's perceived authority. She explained, with emotionless steadiness, that she had not hidden her success because she feared judgment. She had hidden it because anything her sister touched always deteriorated, always fractured, always collapsed under the weight of her unpredictable envy. She had protected her achievements not from the world, but from the one person who sought control over everything. The statement did not need emphasis. It settled over the room with chilling precision. It exposed the truth behind every quiet decision she had ever made. It placed responsibility directly on the sister's behavior. It revealed the consequence of years spent cultivating dominance instead of connection. The sister collapsed emotionally in a way she had never imagined possible. Her composure dissolved completely. Her image shattered in front of the very people she had tried to impress. Her social standing weakened in an irreversible manner. The manipulation, the insecurity, the entitlement stood uncovered for everyone to see. The main character did not gloat. She did not celebrate. She simply allowed the silence to settle. Her calm presence finalized the shift in power. She had executed every step with precision. She had delivered the truth with the coldness it required. She had ended a long cycle without raising her voice. Her sister had destroyed herself exactly as she always did, without ever realizing she held the blade the entire time. She walked away from the room without turning her head. Every step carried the weight of inevitability, measured, deliberate, untouched by hesitation or remorse. Behind her, the remnants of her sister's entitlement lingered in the stale air, echoing in ways she would never admit to anyone. The truth settled into the corners of that space, invisible yet undeniable, a quiet judgment that could not be ignored. The house, the family, the expectations they had all imposed collapsed inward under the gravity of what had been revealed. She carried nothing with her but the certainty that all illusions had been stripped away. Her sister would continue to breathe in the same air, exist in the same world, yet she would never escape the clarity that had been delivered so coldly, so patiently. Power had never screamed. It had whispered, and in its quiet, it had conquered. The final lesson remained unspoken, lingering like frost on the edges of every memory. People think silence means weakness. But silence is where she had learned to build everything that her sister had never seen coming.